Welcome to Jets Rewind. I'm Marty Schupak in Valley Cottage, New York. I'm joined by Ray Clifford in Marysville, Ohio. Ralph Schrager, our third co-host, he has the day off, well deserved. Ray, how you doing?
Doing good. Some unseasonably warm weather here in Ohio and enjoying it.
Yeah, we actually hit the 60s today out here in New York. It was just
Same here.
gorgeous. And
Very windy, but warm. So,
yeah, I'm hoping to catch a quick jog before dinner, but we'll see what happens, how this goes. But Ray, it's every day you hear different things. And yesterday, Carr, Derek Carr, officially became a free agent, which I got to give his agent kudos, Ray, because whatever contract he signed, and he would have been due like I guess 40 or 45 million dollars if they kept him. And now he's a free agent, and it's literally 1 month ahead of any other free agent, I think, that could sign the NFL. So that's a great job by that agent.
oh yeah,
And
I got the feeling that also they had maybe a trade partner and he wouldn't approve the trade. That's how they made it sound on. It was on NFL Network. One of them said he basically enacted his no trade clause, which made me think then they had a trade partner, but he said no, which I don't blame him if he did that. As a matter of fact, I would have been all for him doing that, regardless if he goes to the Jets. I just think they screwed with him so much that I wouldn't have done him any favors either.
right. And I guess the team that you're talking about is probably the Saints
Probably, yeah.
that they spoke to, but he has no loyalty. Whatever happened to the Raiders, I don't know if it's because he was benched with 2 games to go or if he didn't get along with their coach or whatever it is. But he just, you hear little bits and pieces. And I know things coming from his brother, David Carr, saying people will find out the truth and what really happened with the team eventually.
Yeah.
So he's a free agent. But Ray, you started telling me before we got on the air that you're kind of getting a little cool towards him. Could tell me why now?
Well, I've just, listened and looked at some of this stuff and really, um, honestly, the main difference between him and Rodgers to me is that Rodgers, we just don't know what he wants to do. But as far as playing, there's no comparison. I mean, if you look at Carr's stats, and I know they can say he doesn't have the best, team around him. He's Rodgers hasn't always either. They act like Rodgers has always got a Super Bowl level team around him. He doesn't. But Carr's stats are very pedestrian, really, all things considered. And they aren't anything that make me want to spend, the Jets to spend 50 million or more a year on him. And that's probably what he's going to get from somebody. His playoff record isn't great. His stats in cold weather aren't great. So, I mean, I'm not going to be against it if they get him. I'm going to cheer for him and hope hope he turns out to be best. The cold weather thing doesn't bother me as much. I think that's a case of he doesn't play in cold weather a whole lot. So, maybe his stats would be better if he played there, and practiced there every week. So, but I never, even before this became an issue, I was never overly impressed with him in his time in the Raiders. He's been okay, and at times he's looked good, but other times he hasn't impressed me at all. So I don't know that we're missing out a whole lot if we don't end up with him.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, let's say tomorrow, February 16th, he signs a 4-year contract with the Jets, $160 million, 4 years. Jets don't have to give up a draft choice. Would you rather have that, or if somebody said it's 50-50 with Aaron Rodgers and now the Raiders are interested, what would you rather do? And it's going to cost you a number one this year, next year. I'm sorry, number one and a number three next year, and a number two this year. Where would you go if you're GM?
Well, you mean, well, first of all, if it was in that term you laid out, that would be assuming that Rodgers played next year, because I wouldn't link any draft picks to next year on Rodgers unless he plays a second year.
They'll be conditional, I'm sure.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
second year.
that's but I would probably rather go with Rodgers and then, focus on, either drafting a quarterback this year or signing somebody, next year, or, trading for somebody next year, or even drafting, hopefully, I don't think any of the top quarterbacks will be available at our first pick anyway. So, I mean, I think anything we do other than one of these guys is going to be a project. So, but I'm just not 100% sold on Derek Carr being the answer for the Jets.
Yeah, Ray, does it bother you? And we all know that sometime this week, Aaron Rodgers is going into I call it the pit, into darkness for like 4 or 5 days, whatever it is. But does the way he is, his personality, does that bother you at all? Because I can't see him participating in team OTAs at all, to
No,
me. And
no, I mean, and if ever he needed to, it would be if we traded for him, because you want to get him in, on the field with the guys he's going to be playing with. But does it surprise me? No. Does it bother me? Yeah. I mean, he's just turned into a Brett Favre all over again with this. Every year we've got to sit back and wait for his big decision. And I don't like that. I like guys who are just like, yeah, I want to play. The one thing I'll say about Brady, other than when he retired and then unretired, he was like, there was no question he was playing next year.
well,
The diva thing.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, and you brought it up first. If you remember when he went to Tampa, and by the way, they got 3 playoff seasons and 1 Super Bowl championship from them.
Yeah.
But he right away, I remember he went down there at the time with his family. He had rented Derek Jeter's house, and he started working out at a local high school with the receivers. And if you remember, if my memory serves me right, Ray, he actually got in trouble because I think the COVID was at its peak then when he started working out, and for some reason they said he shouldn't have been doing it. But
yeah, probably.
Yeah, he's all in, and I would say the difference is a guy like Tom Brady is all in for him and the team, but Aaron Rodgers is all in for him, and
That's the way it seems.
And I think that's the difference. Now, if you know that Derek Carr's agent's going to be looking for a 4 or 5 year contract, he's going to be asking for 5, and he'll probably settle on 4. I threw out the number 4 at 160, and I think that's going to be in the ballpark. And if that happens, Ray, and I was going to bring this up next, I can't see the Jets keeping Zach Wilson on this team. I want to know your feelings, and I have a question. What are your feelings about Zach Wilson being on the team?
Well, and before that, I would say that I think I don't think it's going to be $40 million a year for. That's what he's getting now. If he'd have stayed, they had to cut him. But with what everybody's getting, I wouldn't be surprised if, because there's so many teams that are looking for quarterbacks right now. They're about anywhere from 7 to 9 teams are all in the market for quarterbacks. So somebody, I believe, is going to be willing to pay him around 50 a year as opposed to 40, which is another reason I'm not big on him. But
so you're saying he's going to get more than what I said, 50 million a year for like 4 or 5 years.
There are so many teams
right
this year in the quarterback market that that's why I don't think they were talking about it on the NFL Network a bit today, and I agree. I don't think he's going to sign quickly, so I don't think it's something we've got to move fast on Derek Carr if they're interested in him, but they want to still kick the tires on Aaron Rodgers. But they want one of the shows they were talking about all the teams that are or maybe in the quarterback market, and there was about 9 of them. So if you get all those teams bidding against each other, yeah, I could see it getting up there in the closer to the 50 million range. Because he was at 40, and with the way the quarterback market is, and if he's the second or third best one on the available, he's going to want top dollar. So I'll be surprised if it's 40. But if it was, that would be where I'd want to be, for the
Right.
Jets' sake. But as far as Zach, I don't see any way I just don't think they'll get rid of him unless somebody makes him a really good offer, which I don't think anybody will based on his performance last year. So I don't think it'll make it worth the Jets' while to trade him rather than keep him. And, especially if it's Aaron Rodgers, they seem to have a good relationship, and maybe, Aaron will mentor him a little, and maybe that could be the magic potion to, turn him into an NFL quarterback. Who knows? But
Right. What's interesting? I was thinking about it. As far as Zach Wilson, if they do somehow keep him on the roster, and I don't think they will, but it's funny because if they keep him and decide to get rid of him and he doesn't play a down for the whole year, I actually think his value will be higher by not playing than it is right now. I really believe that.
well, yeah, very possibly. I mean, unless he goes in and actually plays well and looks like he grew, and that could definitely increase his stock. But that's does anybody believe that at this point? No, I mean, for good reason. He's not shown that. But nobody would have paid a nickel for Geno Smith going into next year if he hadn't had the year he had this.
Right.
So at some point, Zach could mature more and grow, but I mean, chances of it being next year, probably not. But if he got to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for at least a year and maybe two, who knows at that point? So I think they'll keep him around if they get Rodgers. If they don't, I don't know.
I was, and we had talked about it last show when Steve Young was traded for Tampa Bay after two disastrous seasons. The 49ers
Everybody had
gave
disaster
it,
seasons in Tampa then.
yeah, the 49ers gave up a second round pick and a fourth round pick. And I'm not saying the Jets aren't going to get that.
No, but he had really good. He had a really good year, and he had a good career at BYU as well. And
Right.
he had a fairly good season or two in the USFL or whatever for the LA Express. So he showed he could do it at a higher level than college. But he went to Tampa, and I think everybody knew. At that point, Tampa was a total train wreck.
But they was still, the press was talking about how he was a bust then, and so
Yeah.
a lot of the NFL. I was trying to think, Ray, has there been a quarterback that actually started out so bad, but instead of getting traded and being successful on a different team, where the team kept him and he did become a success? I didn't think too deeply, but the one guy I thought of, if you remember, Terry Bradshaw. When he started, he was awful.
Yeah, but
You know,
so
he,
was Pittsburgh.
yeah,
And
they
they got
were.
like two or three drafts in a row that were outstanding, and that changed the whole thing. And kind of like with Brady, who early in his early years at New England, he was more of a game manager and that type of thing, and their defense kind of controlled everything. They won more based on their defense in the early years of the Brady regime, but and then he grew into it. That's kind of like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got that dominant defense, and then they got Franco Harris and the running game going, and the offensive line, which piece by piece, and this is where I get a little nervous about going after Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we have a bunch of talented guys, but we need to fix the line. We need to fix some spots, and if we don't fix those and just concentrate on getting Aaron Rodgers in here, I don't see it being a good. I definitely don't see it being a long-term thing, and I don't know that it'll even be a good season if we
Right.
don't get the line patched up.
They will. I'm pretty confident that they'll do it. The one thing I can tell you about the draft, you got three offensive linemen that are studs that are going to go in the top 15.
Probably
But
the top 10.
yeah, but besides that, there's a drop off, but the drop off is not awful. And in a weak draft, from what I hear from experts, the offensive line is the deepest. And I know centers, you have three centers that are very capable. One for the guy from Minnesota, Schmitz, the guy from Ohio State, and the guy from Arkansas. So I think he'll do it. I just want to circle back for a second. I just brought it up. Terry Bradshaw's rookie year, Ray, you're going to love this. He played in 13 games. He started 8. His completion percentage was 38%. Now, of course, it was a different time.
Right, I know.
That could be
was
like
not throwing the ball all over the
But
field.
that could be like 50 today, but 38. He had 6 touchdowns, and you're going to love this, 24 interceptions. Leading the league. He was miserable. I remember that.
Well,
that
I
first
don't
year.
remember Pittsburgh's record, but that was like 1970, right?
Yeah, it was 1970. That's
So
right.
they were
Yeah.
still like 2 years away from starting to really
Right.
turn the corner.
I'm saying I don't care what the Jets say. I think they get rid of themselves of Zach Wilson. I just don't think he's going to be on the team next year. I really don't. All right,
Yeah.
Ray, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say maybe. I mean, well, I guess we'll just see how it plays out. I don't. You know what you say he's not going to be on the team, but what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to cut him.
Well, I think they'll get it. They'll trade. They won't get the value
So
they wanted.
You think they're willing to just give him away?
I think it's going to be anywhere from a 4th to a 6th round pick. I know how much Joe Douglas values the draft picks, but I think they're going to want to cleanse themselves of a number of quarterbacks, he being one of them. And I think it'll be accepted by the owner, and they're going to move on. If you know this, and I've studied like Howard Roseman, the GM of the Eagles that just lost the Super Bowl. And one thing that I hear all the time and I see about Roseman is that when he makes a mistake, he cut ties, and that's what makes him a success. And if you go back, even your friend Bill Belichick, not being the best drafter, but when he knew he made a mistake, he would cut ties. And I remember years ago, he drafted this super receiver from Florida. His friend Urban Meyer recommended, and he cut him like after the second year. He was a bust, but we'll see. It's gonna. I'll tell you, it's amazing, right? Today it's February 15th, and the Super Bowl is like just like 4 or 5 days old, and already the hot stove season, as they say, is hot and heavy.
Oh yeah.
But Ray, if Carr and Rodgers are gone, what's next? What do you think the other options are right now? And I know this has been
obviously they're going to look at Garoppolo because Saleh knows him. He knows the system. Well, I don't know if he knows the system anymore, but I think Garoppolo is an option. Obviously, I think all the other options we talked about are still options. I think Baker Mayfield will be an option. I think Minshew will be an option. I mean, I think anybody at that point becomes a stopgap other than Garoppolo will want pretty top. I won't say top dollar, but he'll want up there quite a bit. He'd be in the 35 to 40 range, I think, for Garoppolo at least. The crazy thing is these owners and these teams that have the cap space, they, you get 6-8 teams all bidding for guys. They overbid, and so we're going to see quarterbacks getting the top ones that are available, which would, I guess you'd say, Mayfield, Garoppolo, Carr, and Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers is a trade though if they get him. These teams are all ready to open the wallet to get these guys because they all need a quarterback. And so we've got, as Jets timing is always incredible, and we've picked the worst year to really need a quarterback.
right.
But yeah. I don't think I won't be surprised if Mike White's out in Los Angeles.
Right. With Michael.
So,
yeah.
That's what that won't surprise me. They aren't going to keep Flacco, so this is another reason I'm not sure we'll get rid of Zach, because right now that would leave us with who?
I don't know. Chris Strabler?
Yes, Trevor and Josh
Right.
Johnson. We can hire
Okay.
Josh Johnson back.
I'm not gonna hold this to you, but I'm gonna play the gun to your head. I'm gonna name a player, 3 players, and just tell me what team quickly do you think he's on next year? Here we go. Derek Carr.
Carolina.
That's who I say. Panthers. Aaron Rodgers.
I think he's back with Green Bay, to be honest with you.
I say the Raiders. Okay, the Jets.
Um, I'd like to say Mayfield, but I don't think they'll go for Mayfield. I think they'll make a serious run at Garoppolo if they can't get Rodgers. Now, that's assuming
Right.
that Rodgers does go somewhere else.
And that starts like around the middle of March, I guess, free agency. March.
But with Rodgers, it's a trade, so we don't have
Right. Rodgers, it's a trade, and Derek Carr is free now. But for
Yeah.
everyone else, I
But as
believe,
far as any of the others,
yeah, and if Carr keeps waiting, I think it's in the benefit of the teams that are going to be bidding for him. Though I really believe that Tepper for the Panthers is going to really overpay for him. That's my feeling. And
I won't be surprised.
And a great selling point is Frank Reich is there too,
Yeah.
which I think he would like too. Ray, you think Joe Douglas at this point should get an extension, or you think it's like playoffs or bust, or he's gone next year?
Is he in his last year of his deal?
Let's see, 6 years. Maybe it's second to
I
the
think
last
it's
year.
next year. I mean, if they had to, I'd extend him personally, but I think if he's got 2 years left, I think they'll wait another year, but it won't bother me if they were to extend him now. I think it's playoff or bust for Saleh. I don't know that it is for Joe Douglas, because you got to throw out the Zach Wilson thing. He's bringing in that's a collaboration. Look at like the GM was the sole decider. I think they talked to Saleh, they talked to LaFleur and him. They're all there. They got excited by the off-grid throws and everything, and I think that was a group decision. I don't think Saleh's, just because of Zach, I don't think Saleh's. And Becton, you can't foresee injuries. I mean, you hear people talk about Becton. They say if he's ever healthy, he's outstanding. Well, we've never seen it. So I think he's done too many good things to just say, playoffs are bust. I mean, but with Sal, I think it could be, and that scares me a little bit. I hate constant change, but
right, I do too. And
I have a feeling it will be for Sal if they don't make the playoffs.
an earlier report had mentioned that Mike LaFleur and the assistant GM Rex Hogan, who I still have no idea what he does, they were really politicking for the Jets to get Zach Wilson. Even at one point, one of the two, I forgot which one, saying that they thought he was better than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
I would love to have heard that on a tape.
Well, I mean, I never believed that personally. I mean, just Trevor Lawrence just has all the tools, and I just, he got so hindered by Urban Meyer that first season. It's hard to imagine what he would have been like had he had some competent coaching that first year. But you're starting to see what he could be by the end of this past year.
Right. Just want to bring up one thing. We skipped over something I wanted to touch on with Derek Carr. If you remember, David Carr was a backup quarterback to Eli Manning.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, I'm sure he bounces a lot off his brother, a lot about the area, New York, and how it is to play there. Just so you know, David Carr played for the Giants in 2008, 2009, 2010, he was on the 49ers. 2011, from what I see, he was out of football. And in 2012, he came back to the Giants as a backup. I found that pretty interesting that he came back to them too. He might have some sort of influence on his brother about how it was to play in New York. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, as you mentioned, about 8 or 9 teams interested. the agent for Derek Carr is going to want Woody Johnson and David Tepper of Carolina to get into a bidding war.
Sure they are.
That's his job. That's really his job. But I happen to think he's going to end up in Carolina. All right, let's move on.
Well, one quick thing on that too, as
Sure.
far as bidding war, any bidding wars go, this isn't baseball, so there is a cap they've got to deal with. So they can only get into the Jets I'm talking about can only get into so much of a bidding war because we aren't like the last couple of years. We haven't got tons of dough hanging around, to make outlandish offers. So I think if Tepper really wants him, he can easily make it an offer the Jets really can't afford to match.
Right. And you touched upon Mike White. Do you think he's on the New York Jets in 2023?
My gut tells me no. I would like it if he was. I think if he is, then there is a chance they could try and shop Zach around. But if he's gone, I don't see how they get rid of Zach too. But who knows?
Yeah, it's amazing, Ray. I listen to a lot of the radio and a lot of these so-called experts, and I hear these people that call up. I read all these message boards. It's like Jet fans are unbelievable because they think like the rest of the NFL's waiting in line for the Jets to make a decision on the quarterback, and then everyone else is going to. Everyone else is going to pick
like
up
the Jets have the pick of the litter.
It's unbelievable to say, well, the Jets should focus on Rodgers, but if they don't think they'll get him, then they should get Derek Carr. And it's just like you said, the Jets are not the only team bidding for a quarterback. It's unbelievable. The Jets, I think there's a good chance they're going to end up shut out by some of these guys, the three guys, and even they might get shut out from Baker Mayfield. Though something
I think Baker Mayfield has that personality that would make him want to come to New York. Now,
exactly, it's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, so that's the one thing they got going for him is he knows that if he were successful here, first of all, he'd own the town, and second of all, you think those progressive ads were good for him. He'd be doing ads out the rear end, but
right.
So I mean, I think we've got that going for us with Baker Mayfield because he doesn't. The thing about him is he doesn't want to come somewhere and he's automatically knows he's going to be a backup. So if it's Aaron Rodgers, that ain't going to be anything to do with Baker Mayfield, but he would be more than happy to come here and compete for the starting job with, Zach and Mike White or whoever. If he thought he had a shot at winning it, I think he'd be more than happy to come to New York.
It's funny when you said that, I said to myself the same thing. Something tells me Baker Mayfield would love to do it in New York after what happened to him.
Oh yeah.
And everything else. I really believe that. Ray, the Jets have they hired a number of assistant coaches. You're gonna love who they're interviewing for the receivers coach. It's one Seth Ryan, Rex Ryan's son.
Oh, right. So
yeah, so
coming is
forward.
Rex going to Denver, by the way?
He interviewed. I think he should hire him. I think it's a perfect hire.
I was just thinking about him like the week before they said that. I was, on ESPN, he's okay, but I thought he's got to be wanting to get back into coaching. Maybe not as a head coach, but he's got to be wanting to get back there. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he took it. I think he should. I'd love it if he did.
Well, I think it's up to Sean Payton, but I think Sean Payton should definitely offer to him. His only tie into Rex really was, I believe, Rob Ryan coached with him, I think 1 or 2 years, and Rex never did. But I think it's a great situation for Rex Ryan to get back in. Ray, they have Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator, Pete Carter, offensive line coach. They just hired Todd Downey, the passing game coordinator. I just want to ask you, besides the offensive coordinator, does it really make a difference, these guys? It seems like a lot of these jobs are like interchangeable to me. It's like it's like a baseball manager. Once they end up managing a team and have modest success, they have a job for life in the league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are they, some of them I don't understand. I mean, I still don't understand why a coach needs a guy to say, hey, take a time out, take a time. I mean, I understand about, hey, challenge this, because that guy's up in the booth looking at replays and he's seeing things probably before the coach can. But how a coach gets so distracted, he doesn't, or just in the Detroit game thinks for some reason he didn't need to call a timeout with a minute to go and then let 30 some seconds go off the clock. That just baffles me. But on the other hand, I think, the special teams coach is very important. If you got a good special teams coach, I think you try and hang on to him. I think the offensive line coach is really important. Blocking schemes, so some of them, and there are a few that I think are just, they're conveniences to take a little pressure off the head coach or whoever. But I don't think Parcells ever needed a couple of those guys that they used.
Right.
Remember that when Sean McVay started, is it McVay? Who's the one out in LA? Not
McVay.
Buffalo. Sean McVay.
So McVay, the young kid.
Well, I was thinking that I was mixing him up with the Buffalo coach, but his first year, now I don't know if he still did it. He had one guy who stood behind him the whole time and would pull him back because he had this knack for walking onto the field. And so he'd be behind, and they show him on the sideline. He'd be standing behind him and he'd start walking too far and the guy would grab him and pull him back because he was
right. It's like, do you remember?
Oh, man, I want that job.
Well, how about, remember Bruce Coslet? His daughter would hold the wire to the headphones. That was her job. Remember that?
Yeah, I wonder what they paid her for that too.
Yeah. It's like in basketball they have what they call, if you remember, the Pitino rule, because Rick Pitino used to always wander away from the coach about that is
far down the sideline.
That is funny too. Ray, the Jets in the draft. Let's just have a little fun. We're going to get into the draft in the coming weeks pretty deeply, but their first 3 picks, let's just go by position because we don't know the personnel that well yet. Where do you think they should go? Let's take each pick. You'll pick a position, then I'll pick one, then we'll go to the next pick. First round, where do you think they should go?
Well, again, it's who's available, but my first choice would be obviously an offensive lineman. I'm always wanting them to get a good lineman. I don't know if any would be available. So, I don't know if you want me to say what I would choose if it wasn't one, but my first choice would be if a good one is available, get an offensive lineman.
Okay, what if an offensive lineman wasn't available? And we're talking about the 3 blue chippers.
Right.
The guy from Northwestern.
Yeah, I think they'll be gone in the top 10, to be honest with you, or maybe the top 12 before us. The top 12. That would be our luck that the last of the top 3 would go right before us. But if not available, I think there's some good. I saw one guy. I did see a mock scrolling on the NFL Network screen, and the guy had the Jets picking a cornerback. But then I got thinking, well, maybe he's actually a safety.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what I would say. I would go for a safety if one's available.
Yeah, just before we go on, and I assume sometimes that our fans know, but the 3 blue chippers that everyone's talking about are Paris Johnson from Ohio State, Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, and the other one is Broderick Jones from Georgia. A hair behind them is Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, who was considered a second-round pick, but some mocks have him moving up to the late first, so we'll have to see. And then there's another player, Cody Mauch, Mauch. He's from North Dakota State. He's looking like a second-round pick. And of course,
there's one they were talking about out of Florida too, and I can't think of his name. That looked like he, they a couple of the mocks that were again scrolling, both had him in the top 20, I think. They had one of the one that had the Jets taking the cornerback, who I think he meant safety, calling him a cornerback, had them taking this kid out of Florida, the Chargers. And I thought the last thing the Chargers need is another offensive lineman. But who knows? I don't know if you can ever have enough. But I can't think of his name. But and I don't know if he was well, they're all underclassmen nowadays. If they're any good, they're coming out. But
Well, let me just say there's Darnell Wright from Tennessee. There's a Blake Freeland from BYU. They're not going to draft a BYU player. Jonah Monheim from USC. And, I know who you're talking about. There's Matthew. This guy I love a lot. Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse. And let's see. What the heck's the guy's name? Tip of my tongue, Ray. I forgot it. So from Florida, I know who you mean. But anyway, so my first pick would be I'm going to surprise you, wide receiver. Okay, I'd either go from the guy from TCU or the guy from Ohio State. I just feel we could get something in the second round, and I feel this. I say if the Jets want one of those top three, and if he's not available, I think they could trade down and get a wide receiver and get an extra like third or fourth round pick. So I'm going to say wide receiver in the first round. How about the second round, Ray?
Second round, I mean, whatever we don't get in the first, I think I'd go for in the second. I mean, I think I'd just flip them. I mean, if we end up with a safety, then by the second round, I definitely want an offensive lineman. If we get one in the first, then my first choice would be a safety. But if there's a linebacker available that's good, or basically it'd be a linebacker, a safety if we don't need a lineman.
Right. I would go safety, and the guy I really like, he's not even the first rated one. PFF has Brian Branch from Alabama rated number 1, but I love this guy. I've seen him play at Texas A&M, Antonio Johnson. I love it because we're going to get into more about these guys, but he's 6'3", Ray, and he really is a great anticipator coming up in the line of scrimmage. So I really like him. So I'd go safety. And I'll start with the third pick because I have a receiver and a safety. I'd go offensive lineman. And I do think you could get someone in the third round. The center who I like from Arkansas has been rated as a third rounder. I think he might go late second. But if he's available, I'd go for the center from Arkansas. How about you, Ray, in the third round?
I would be thrilled if they went for another offensive lineman, but I don't think they would. So I think, I just don't think they're going to go for a receiver. But I'll tell you what, if he's still available, which he probably won't be with all the teams that need a quarterback, and that probably is who I should have said in the second round. But if the kid from Florida, who I think is a bit of a project, is still available, I would go after him. He hasn't been that impressive stat wise, so they have him going high, and I think he's going to drop at least to the second, maybe to the third. If he was available in the third, I'd grab Anthony Richardson.
I would love Anthony Richardson. In fact,
I don't think he's going to go in the first round, but everything Reed has him going there.
I think he will. And in fact, I'll tell you this: I was going to save it for another show because I was going to watch you shake your head for about 3 minutes. But if the Jets, do sign Jimmy G, okay, I know he's going to want a 4-year contract, but there's no way they're going to give him 4 years guaranteed. I would sign Anthony Richardson with the 13th pick. I would say right now.
It's funny because I'm looking over a mock draft, and that's who they have us taking.
Oh, really?
But really? I don't think he'll drop to the third, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the second round.
He won't. Ray, I'm telling you,
yeah, you could have told me that last year too. And nobody thought that what's his name, Breece Hall, would make it to the second round. Nobody thought that a lot of guys drop that you don't think are going to. If you look at his stats, Anthony Richardson's stats are not that impressive.
I understand.
So I know he's got a lot of upside, but I'll be surprised. I won't be surprised if he drops to second. I won't be surprised if a team says, yeah, we'll take him. But I would be surprised. By the way, I found that guy, Florida, Osiris Torrance.
Oh yes, Torrance. He's good. He's good.
He's Florida, and that's the guy that, to me, if we're gonna go after, he's a guard though. I would kind of like a tackle,
Yeah,
especially since we don't know what we're doing with between Becton and Brown and whoever. I'd like to see a tackle, but if he's available, that wouldn't be a bad pick, I don't think. At this point, I mean, we have so much time to look through guys, and there's the combine and all that to go through. But right now, yeah,
right. Ray, what is when I came out to Ohio, what is the name of that great restaurant we went to?
Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Roadhouse. I want to place a bet on our internationally syndicated podcast. I say Anthony Richardson goes in the first round. We bet a dinner?
Well, I'm not saying he won't because there's so many
Well,
teams.
wait a minute.
But
Wait a minute.
I won't be surprised if he drops to the second. I'd make it more like 60-40 he goes in the first.
Well, you even mentioned third round before.
No, I said I'd be thrilled, but I don't think he will make it to the third.
So you don't want to place the bet then?
No, because I mean, teams that look, they traded up for Tim Tebow in the first round. I mean, I'm not gonna be shocked.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Ray Clifford is pushed against the wall.
No,
See what happens.
I'm not betting the house on that one.
Okay. All right.
The guys drafting are so quick to just go, oh well, we better grab a quarterback. They're all going, so we better grab one now, and then we end up with what's his name, Hackensack in the second round.
Right. Yeah. Well, that
Hackenberg, whatever the hell.
Yeah, that was an awful pick.
Yeah.
All right, Ray, we're going to close this out. Anything else you want to touch upon before we close out this edition of Jets Rewind?
Congratulations. You were the only one who said the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I didn't think they'd win. I didn't think, man, Andy Reid is so amazing.
He's a great coach.
As good as Philly's D was, he used what they did against him. They like this. They were talking about on there that they like to, when they do crossing patterns, they like to switch the guys off. They're really good at it. Well, the Chiefs just faked doing a crossing pattern and cut back the other way, and they didn't know how to handle it. And it was brilliant. I mean, it was just like Andy Reid is just unbelievable.
And what's your thoughts on that holding call?
It was a tough call for when they made it and everything. I don't think it was. I think it was a penalty, but I've seen them let those go a lot. So I was a little surprised that late at that point in the field in the Super Bowl that they.
Right.
But at the same time, I thought, well, maybe from the ref's angle on the field, it looked worse than it was too. So you always got to we're looking from up top, and we're seeing an angle that they may not have seen. So. But I don't think it was a horrible call. I just was surprised that they actually made it.
Even though I was all in for the Chiefs. I thought they should have let that go.
I would have been okay with them.
Yeah, I thought they should have let it go.
It would have made for a more interesting ending because I still think the Chiefs, they were already in field goal range.
Oh, sure.
But they would have had like 2 minutes to either go down and win it or a minute and a half to go down and win it or
right,
and send it to overtime. So that would have been exciting.
Right. How does this tight end Kelsey get open so much? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
That's
the guy.
The one guy you want to cover, and he's always open.
He's always
very
open.
Athletic too.
So, they're going to throw him the ball, and he's still open, and I just don't get it.
I think part of it is he's very athletic. So if you put a guy like a linebacker on him, he's just going to run away from him. If you put a DB that's able to keep up with him on him, he's generally bigger than him, and he can go up and get the ball over him or something like that. But how he's always open is just
incredible. We can't get a tight end to get 8 catches over 100 yards. I think the last one was Dustin Keller. And it's just amazing to me that he's always open, and he always catches the ball too. He's a phenomenal player. I mean, if Gronkowski was better than him, it's not by much, Ray. You know that.
No, I think he's more athletic than Gronk. He's just that Gronk was big and fast, but he's another one though that I'm like, how is he open all these times? You used to say, who's the. Of course, they had other weapons that you knew they were going to go to. That's kind of like Kansas City had Tyreek Hill, and after they got rid of Hill, you thought, well, okay, they don't have him anymore, so why aren't they? Why is he still getting open? same thing with Gronkowski. They had Welker, and then they had who was it after him, and then
Edelman. Yeah. Well, look, they
Edelman
got.
was,
Listen, look. What's his name? Darius Toney. He might have been like 7 yards from becoming the MVP of the game if he runs that. That punt return was incredible. If you look at it in slow motion, it really was.
yeah.
So, all right, we're gonna close this out. For Ray Clifford would not take the bait on my bet.
No.
Where he at one point he
for dinner if you come out.
we say that again.
You can still go. We can still go to dinner at the.
We'll go to dinner, but we'll go Dutch. But he wouldn't take the bait. So for Ray Clifford in Marysville, Ohio, and Marty Schupak, I'm in Valley Cottage, New York. Please check out Jets Rewind, and if you can, we have a YouTube channel. If you're seeing this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. We really need that. We want to keep this format going as long as we could. Until next time.